The turning point most men miss after 40. After 40, a man's relationship with time changes. In youth, delay feels harmless. Mistakes feel reversible. Options feel endless. With experience, time gains weight. Decisions carry consequence. Indecision carries cost. This is not decline. It is compression. Men who misunderstand this pressure call it limitation. Men who understand it call it clarity. The turning point most men miss is not opportunity. It is decision quality. By mid-career, ability is rarely the problem. Experience is already present. Knowledge is already sufficient. What separates men who stabilize and grow from men who stall is simple. They convert experience into structured behavior, not someday. Not after proving himself for years. Not once conditions improved. He spoke as if the decision had already been made by him. Nothing happened right away. Days passed, then weeks, then months. From the outside, it looked like nothing was moving. A man over 40, earning little, assigned work no one envied, waiting without complaint. Many would have called it foolishness. Most would have gone home convinced they had misread reality. But reality was not misread. It was being interpreted correctly, just not loudly. What could not be seen was happening internally. Each day, his thinking sharpened. Each task refined his discipline. Each quiet moment strengthened his resolve. He worked where he was placed, not as someone trying to survive, but as someone preparing to justify a future role he had already chosen. He did not drift. He did not complain. He did not negotiate effort based on recognition. He treated small responsibilities as training, not punishment. Then opportunity appeared, but not in the form people imagine when they talk about breakthroughs. It did not arrive as applause. It did not arrive as promotion. It did not arrive as encouragement. It arrived as indifference. Others ignored it. Salesmen dismissed it. They decided it wasn't worth their attention. They evaluated it quickly and moved on. This man did not. He paused. He examined. He asked a different question. Where others saw inconvenience, he saw leverage. Where others saw rejection, he saw an opening that required patience, not force. He acted while others hesitated, and that single decision redirected his entire life. What followed was not magic. It was consequence. Responsibility expanded. Trust followed. Authority grew. Wealth came later, as a byproduct, not as a reward for wishing, but for judgment exercised under pressure. Not because he was young, not because he was lucky, not because timing favored him, but because a definite purpose had finally been supported by consistent behavior. This is not a story about starting early. This is not a lesson reserved for people with decades ahead of them. It is a reminder meant specifically for those who believe time has already spoken its verdict. If you are over 40, you do not experience time the way you once did. You feel weight where younger men feel urgency. You have lived long enough to see plans delayed, effort misunderstood, potential postponed. You know how easily years disappear when decisions are avoided. That is precisely why this moment matters more now than ever before. Most men do not fail after 40 because they lack ability. They fail because they quietly stop deciding. They accept conditions as permanent, explain away ambition as impractical, and mistake caution for wisdom. The danger is not wanting too much. The danger is deciding too little. Life does not withdraw opportunity because of age. It withdraws opportunity from indecision. The same principles that reward initiative at 30 still reward clarity at 50 when they are applied. Instead of being converted into progress, their experience dissolves into regret. They replay what could have been. They argue with the past. They relive conversations that no longer exist. And all the while, enormous power sits idle. Think of a river that has burst its banks. The force is undeniable, yet nothing productive is built from flooding. But once that same current is channeled, once it is directed, it lights cities and moves industry. That is the difference between bitterness and purpose. After 40, emotion deepens. It no longer flares quickly like it did in youth. It burns slower, but it burns longer. If left unmanaged, it becomes resentment. If disciplined, it becomes endurance. This is where many men fail. At this stage of life, progress becomes structural. Behavioral psychology shows that identity stabilizes before results appear. Men who wait for external confirmation remain reactive. Men who decide internally and align behavior early create leverage. This is not optimism. It is behavioral positioning. Small actions stop being small when they are rehearsals for scale. Discipline becomes identity instead of effort. They confuse persistence with stubbornness. They hold on to frustration instead of converting it. They continue pushing without changing direction. True persistence is not blind repetition. It is intelligent redirection. It is the deliberate act of taking the weight of disappointment and assigning it a job. I call this mental reinvestment. The same energy once wasted on regret is reassigned to execution. The same emotion once spent on resentment is redirected into discipline. Nothing is denied. Nothing is suppressed. It is simply repurposed. Emotional fatigue, the heaviness so many men feel in middle age, is rarely the result of overwork. It is the result of unresolved direction. Energy trapped without purpose drains the body and clouds judgment. Release it, and clarity returns. The turning point always appears when a man stops waiting for permission and starts acting from responsibility. Not tomorrow, not when circumstances improve, but now, when commitment replaces explanation. The account you've just heard is not legend. It is documented history. History shows that decisive identity often precedes opportunity, not the other way around. In multiple early industrial case studies, individuals who assumed responsibility before recognition consistently outperformed those waiting for validation. Few remember that he arrived at an age when society expects settling, not expansion. That detail matters. He had lived long enough to experience disappointment. He had failed often enough to understand consequence. Yet he refused to allow past delay to define future capacity. If you are still listening, still searching, still carrying that quiet restlessness that has not gone away with time, understand this clearly. This is not the end of your story. This is the moment it demands decision. What follows will explain why most men miss their turning point, and how to recognize yours when it stands directly in front of you. Listen as though responsibility itself were listening back, because this may be the hour where direction replaces drift. Redirection, turning experience into power. There is a truth most men never learn, even after decades of living. Emotion is never destroyed. It is only misdirected. Every regret you carry, every frustration you suppress, every quiet disappointment you replay late at night, none of it is weakness. It is stored energy. And like any form of energy, it either works for you or against you depending on how it is aimed. Most men after 40 do not lack strength. They lack direction. Their effort is real, but scattered. Their intelligence is sharp, but unfocused. Their emotional weight is heavy, but unused. Aim it, and momentum begins. This is why men often feel stronger once they finally commit, even when their circumstances have not yet changed. Direction restores vitality. Every disappointment you survived was teaching you something precise about limits, people, timing, and yourself. The lesson was never meant to remain theoretical. It was meant to be applied. Bitterness is not strength turned inward. It is belief pointed backward. Faith, by contrast, looks forward. To believe only in failure is to train the mind for retreat. To believe in possibility, grounded in experience, is to prepare for construction. You cannot hold both at the same time. The moment you choose direction, energy follows. Here is a law worth remembering. One well-directed year born of clear decision can outweigh 10 years of scattered effort. Time does not multiply results. Focus does. A single aim, reinforced daily, compounds faster than endless motion without clarity. Many men resist repetition because they mistake it for stagnation. They say, "I've heard this before," not realizing that repetition is how belief becomes behavior. No one becomes disciplined by hearing a principle once. No one becomes decisive by agreeing intellectually. Thought repeated becomes instruction. Instruction becomes habit. Habit becomes identity. Middle-age adversity is not punishment. It is filtration. Life strips away borrowed beliefs and leaves only what you actually stand on. It asks a quiet but serious question: will you now use what you know? The same pressure that breaks an undirected man sharpens a focused one. When disappointment is reinterpreted as training instead of injustice, something changes immediately. You stop wasting effort on blame. You stop negotiating with self-pity. You begin extracting value. Controlled imagination plays a critical role here. Not wishful thinking, not fantasy, but deliberate visualization of behavior. You sit quietly and construct, in clear mental detail, the man you now decide to be. Not hoping, building. You see yourself acting with composure, speaking with restraint, responding instead of reacting. You rehearse discipline before life demands it. The subconscious responds to repetition, not logic. Nothing I have lived is wasted. Every setback sharpened my judgment. I do not start over. I start higher. It is instruction. When conviction replaces complaint, posture changes. Tone changes. People sense steadiness where uncertainty once lived. Not arrogance. Authority. Men like Henry Ford were not protected from failure. They were refined by it. Every setback clarified process. Every rejection eliminated illusion. He did not curse resistance. He studied it. Others withdrew belief. He reinforced it. Instead of collapsing into anger, he redirected humiliation into daily excellence. He focused on consistency, not revenge. Within a few years, he rebuilt, not just wealth, but stability. His second success was quieter, but far stronger. Discipline turned loss into leverage. This is the second turning point after 40. Not reacting to what has been, but redirecting it. You stop fighting your past. You start using it. The years behind you stop pulling you backward. They begin pushing you forward. Energy, once aimed, obeys decision. The law of the unshakable mind. A man's real turning point does not arrive when circumstances improve. It arrives when belief stabilizes. The strongest men are not those who have never failed. They are the ones who rebuilt conviction after it was broken. Once belief has been tested and restored, it no longer depends on mood, approval, or external results. It becomes structural, permanent, reliable. This is what creates an unshakable mind. An unshakable mind does not deny difficulty. It simply refuses to be governed by it. After 40, many men do not struggle because they are exhausted. They struggle because they quietly believe renewal is no longer available to them. They tell themselves their best years are behind them, that momentum belongs to someone younger, that stability now requires surrender. Those thoughts feel realistic, but they are not truth. They are unexamined conclusions. Belief is not a feeling. It is a decision reinforced daily. When a man believes decline is inevitable, decline obeys. When he believes renewal is normal and available, his behavior adjusts accordingly. And behavior, repeated, reshapes outcomes. The mind does not age into weakness. It ages into precision. What must be rebuilt is trust in one's own direction. Faith, in this sense, is not blind optimism. It is disciplined commitment without constant evidence. It is acting as though stability and progress are expected outcomes, not miracles. Men who wait for proof before acting never move. Men who move create proof. This is why applied belief always outperforms intellectual agreement. After 40, fear often disguises itself as realism. When thought, emotion, and behavior agree, the mind stops leaking energy. Doubt no longer interrupts action. Decisions are made once and executed repeatedly. This is mental permanence. The world adjusts to the man who does not keep adjusting himself. Repetition plays a critical role here. Repeating vision is not childish. It is structural. Every stable system relies on repetition. The heart repeats. The sun rises repeatedly. Strength is built through repeated resistance. Faith, without repetition, decays. This is why daily discipline matters more than rare inspiration. To rebuild self-respect after disappointment, start small. Make promises you can keep. Wake when you say you will. Study consistently. Finish tasks fully. Speak carefully. These acts repair internal trust. Each kept promise sends a signal inward. I can rely on myself again. That signal compounds. Soon, larger commitments feel natural instead of intimidating. Discipline is not punishment. It is restoration. History reflects this pattern clearly. Abraham Lincoln did not become steady because success was easy. He became steady because endurance taught him restraint. When pressure intensified, his composure steadied others. His authority was emotional, not positional. His strength was not optimism. It was continuity. The same principle applies universally. A man who remains composed after loss becomes formidable. His confidence is no longer tied to outcomes. His decisions are no longer reactive. He moves deliberately. This is the moment age transforms from liability into advantage. You stop chasing reassurance. You stop negotiating with doubt. You stop waiting for permission. Instead, you act from settled conviction. The decisive shift after 40 is internal. It is the day you stop asking life for guarantees and begin operating from principle. Circumstances lose leverage when belief becomes non-negotiable. People feel this shift immediately. They defer to your judgment. They trust your pacing. They listen more closely, not because you speak louder, but because you no longer speak uncertainly. Authority emerges when inner conflict ends. Failure becomes instruction. Experience becomes leverage. Age becomes credibility. This is not a single breakthrough moment. It is a sustained way of operating. The man who understands time correctly redirects his emotional energy, and disciplines belief becomes increasingly effective with each year. His strength compounds instead of eroding. Now comes the choice. You can continue drifting, explaining, delaying, justifying. Or you can stand on your internal foundation and decide, clearly and calmly. This is my hour. My direction is settled. My discipline is consistent. My future will reflect the order I maintain now. When a man reaches this point, life responds, not dramatically, not instantly, but predictably, because reality always aligns with sustained behavior. And once belief is stable, Everything else becomes manageable. Execution under pressure. Belief alone does not change a life. Belief must be carried into action when conditions are uncomfortable. This is where most men stop. They understand the ideas. They agree with the principles. They feel a temporary surge of clarity. But when pressure appears, fatigue, resistance, uncertainty, they hesitate. They delay. They wait for conditions to improve. And in that waiting, momentum dies. Execution under pressure is the dividing line between intention and outcome. After 40, pressure feels different. The stakes feel higher. The margin for error seems smaller. Responsibility weighs heavier. That is exactly why disciplined execution matters more now than ever before. You are no longer experimenting. You are building something that must hold. Pressure exposes habits. When conditions tighten, a man does not rise to his ideals. He defaults to his routines. If his habits are weak, pressure reveals weakness. If his habits are disciplined, pressure sharpens him. This is not theory. It is observable behavior. Men who succeed later in life are not reckless. They are precise. They do not rush, but they do not stall. They make fewer decisions, but they commit fully to the ones they make. They understand that clarity without execution is just another form of delay. The world does not reward insight. It rewards follow-through. Execution is not dramatic. It is repetitive. It is showing up when motivation is absent. It is completing tasks fully even when no one is watching. It is choosing consistency over comfort. Pressure will test this immediately. There will be days when effort feels pointless, when progress is invisible, when the old voice returns and says, "Why now?" or "Why bother?" That voice is not truth. It is resistance to responsibility. Responsibility is heavy because it removes excuses. Once you commit to execution, you can no longer blame age, timing, or circumstance. Results may take time, but direction is no longer negotiable. This is why many avoid full commitment. It demands ownership. Execution requires structure, clear schedules, clear priorities, clear standards. Not perfection, clarity. You must decide what matters each day and do those things regardless of mood. Emotional consistency follows behavioral consistency, not the other way around. Men who wait to feel ready rarely act. Men who act become ready through repetition. Consider this practical reality. Two men can hold the same belief. The one who executes daily will outperform the one who reflects endlessly. Execution compounds. 1 hour of focused work repeated consistently outweighs sporadic bursts of enthusiasm. Pressure does not disappear. It becomes manageable through familiarity. This is how confidence is built. Confidence is not self-talk. It is evidence accumulated through action. Each completed task reinforces identity. I'm the kind of man who finishes. Each kept commitment strengthens internal trust. I do what I say. Under pressure, this trust matters more than talent. Many men fail not because they lack ability, but because they abandon structure when stress appears. They improvise emotionally. They loosen standards. They delay decisions. Execution demands the opposite. Under pressure, standards must tighten, not relax. You simplify. You reduce noise. You focus on what is directly controllable. You do not argue with reality. You work with it. This is maturity in action. There is nothing glamorous about it, but it is effective. Men who master execution understand that discomfort is not a signal to stop. It is a signal to stabilize. They do not confuse resistance with danger. They ask better questions. What can I do today that moves this forward? What must be done regardless of how I feel? What would consistency look like right now? These questions eliminate drama. Execution also requires patience. Results rarely arrive on the same schedule as effort. This gap tests commitment. Many quit here, assuming lack of immediate feedback means failure. It does not. It means the process is working beneath the surface. Growth often becomes visible only after a threshold is crossed. Until then, execution feels unrewarded. This is where discipline separates builders from spectators. The men who endure this phase quietly accumulate leverage. They become reliable, predictable, trusted. Opportunities tend to move toward reliability. Not luck, not charisma, consistency. Execution creates a reputation before results become visible. People notice who shows up steadily, who delivers without explanation, who does not collapse under inconvenience. That reputation compounds faster than any single success. Under pressure, your behavior is your message. Complaints communicate instability. Consistency communicates strength. This is why execution is ultimately a form of self-respect. You stop negotiating with distractions. You stop waiting for permission. You stop explaining yourself. You do the work. Age does not prevent this. Indecision does. After 40, the cost of delay is clarity. You already know enough. What remains is action aligned with that knowledge. Execution does not require dramatic change. It requires disciplined repetition. Set standards. Honor them daily. Adjust intelligently, not emotionally. This is how momentum is built without burnout. This is how pressure becomes productive. And this is how a man proves, to himself first, that his decision was real. Identity, consistency, and authority. Results do not change first. Identity does. This is the part most people misunderstand. They believe identity comes after success, after recognition, after validation. But in reality, identity is what creates the conditions for those things to appear. What you repeatedly do under ordinary conditions defines who you are long before anyone notices. Consistency is not about intensity. It is about predictability. When your behavior becomes predictable, to yourself first, identity stabilizes. You stop asking, "Can I do this?" You begin knowing, "This is how I operate." That shift is subtle, but powerful. After 40, identity matters more than ambition. Ambition is emotional. Identity is structural. Ambition fluctuates. Identity endures. A man who relies on motivation will always struggle with momentum. A man who relies on standards moves forward regardless of how he feels. This is where authority is born. Authority is not dominance. It is reliability under pressure. People trust those whose behavior does not change with circumstances. They follow those who remain steady when conditions are uncertain. Consistency creates gravity. The more consistently you act in alignment with your values, the less you need to explain yourself. Your presence begins to carry weight. You speak less. You decide faster. You react slower. This is not arrogance. It is internal alignment. Many men confuse busyness with consistency. They do many things, but nothing compounds because there is no stable pattern. Consistency requires repetition of the right actions, not constant movement. It requires restraint. Knowing what not to do is as important as knowing what to pursue. Identity is reinforced by boundaries. You stop entertaining distractions that dilute focus. You reduce commitments that fragment attention. You protect routines that stabilize progress. This discipline creates calm. Calm is not passivity. It is control without tension. Men who develop calm authority are not hurried. They are deliberate. They do not chase approval. They let results speak. Over time, others notice. Not suddenly. Gradually, reputation is built quietly. People observe who finishes what they start, who honors deadlines, who remains composed under pressure, who does not dramatize difficulty. That observation turns into trust. Trust turns into opportunity. This is not favoritism. It is pattern recognition. Organizations, clients, and individuals look for stability. They invest in those who reduce uncertainty. Consistency does that. A man who shows up the same way on difficult days as he does on easy days signals reliability. That signal compounds. Eventually, your identity precedes you. Before you speak, people expect clarity. Before you act, people assume follow-through. This is authority without force. After 40, this is your greatest advantage. You no longer need to prove potential. You demonstrate dependability. Dependability outlasts talent. Many gifted men fail because they cannot sustain effort. Many average men succeed because they can. Identity is not declared. It is practiced. Every small decision reinforces it. When you keep your word, when you complete tasks fully, when you maintain standards privately, these moments accumulate. Eventually, discipline becomes automatic. You no longer negotiate with yourself. You act. This reduces internal friction. Most exhaustion comes not from work, but from constant decision-making about whether to work. Identity eliminates that. This is what I do. No debate. This clarity conserves energy. As consistency deepens, confidence stabilizes. You no longer rely on external validation. You trust your process. This trust changes how you move through the world. You listen more carefully. You speak more precisely. You tolerate less noise. Others feel this shift. They may not articulate it, but they sense authority. Authority is the byproduct of alignment over time. This is why identity must be protected. Short-term compromises weaken it. Inconsistent standards confuse it. Emotional decisions fracture it. Every time you abandon structure, you teach yourself that discipline is optional. Over time, that lesson becomes costly. The opposite is also true. Every time you hold the line, especially when it's uncomfortable, you reinforce the identity you are building. This reinforcement compounds. Eventually, effort feels lighter. Not because work is easier, but because resistance has been removed. You are no longer fighting yourself. This is maturity, not dramatic transformation. Sustained coherence. A man with coherent identity becomes difficult to disrupt. Criticism loses power. Delays lose urgency. Setbacks lose drama. He adjusts, continues, and improves. Legacy, responsibility, and the final decision. Every life eventually reaches a quiet question. Not shouted, not dramatic, but persistent. What am I building that will remain? This is not a question of fame. It is a question of structure. Legacy is not what people say about you. Legacy is what continues to function because of how you lived. After 40, the focus must shift. From chasing outcomes, to constructing systems. From proving worth, to exercising responsibility. From short-term wins, to long-term reliability. This is where many men hesitate. Because responsibility feels heavy. It removes excuses. It removes comfort. It removes the illusion that someone else will fix things later. But responsibility also restores control. The moment you accept full responsibility for your behavior, your standards, and your decisions, something stabilizes inside you. You stop blaming timing. You stop resenting the past. You stop waiting for permission. You begin operating. Responsibility is not punishment. It is ownership. And ownership changes how you move. You no longer ask, "What can I get away with?" You ask, "What must be done properly?" That single shift separates men who drift from men who build. A legacy is not created through intensity. It is created through continuity. What you do repeatedly matters more than what you do impressively. This is why discipline must outlast motivation. Motivation starts fires. Discipline keeps systems running. The men whose work endures are not the most emotional. They are the most consistent. They do not need to be watched. They do not need reminders. They do not need applause. They understand that standards are private before they are public. This is leadership at its core. Leadership is not position. It is reliability multiplied over time. People follow those who remove uncertainty, those who make decisions calmly, those who do not panic when conditions change. That kind of presence is built, not claimed. It is built through thousands of small, disciplined actions that align with one clear direction. After 40, you no longer need more information. You need fewer contradictions. You must simplify, choose fewer goals, commit to fewer directions, but execute them fully. Complexity dilutes force. Simplicity concentrates it. The most effective men are not scattered. They are precise. They know what they stand for. They know what they will not tolerate. They know where their energy goes. This clarity creates momentum. Momentum is not speed. It is direction without interruption. When direction is protected, progress becomes inevitable, not because of fate, but because systems compound. Daily discipline compounds. Clear decisions compound. Stable identity compounds. Over time, results appear predictable, not dramatic, not sudden, but solid. This is the kind of success that does not collapse under pressure. It survives stress. It survives boredom. It survives criticism. Because it was never built on emotion. It was built on structure. Now comes the final decision. Not a loud one. Not a public one. But a private commitment. You decide that your life will no longer be guided by reaction. You decide that your behavior will match your direction. You decide that you will stop negotiating with distraction, delay, and doubt. You accept that progress is earned daily, not granted suddenly. And you commit to acting accordingly. This decision does not change everything overnight, but it changes what happens next. From this point forward, every action either reinforces your standards or weakens them. Every choice either builds momentum or leaks it. There is no neutral. This is not pressure. It is clarity. Clarity simplifies effort. When you know who you are and how you operate, action becomes natural. You do not wait to feel ready. You prepare and act anyway. You do not chase confidence. You build evidence through follow-through. You do not look for shortcuts. You build systems that last. This is how responsibility becomes freedom. Freedom is not the absence of structure. It is the result of it. When your life is organized by discipline, your mind becomes quiet. When your behavior is aligned, your energy stabilizes. You stop wasting effort on internal conflict. That peace is earned, and it is powerful. Because a calm, disciplined man is difficult to manipulate, distract, or derail. He moves forward regardless of noise. This is the final truth. You are not late. You are not behind. You are not disqualified. But you are responsible. Responsible for what you choose next. Responsible for how you act daily. Responsible for the standards you maintain when no one is watching. Nothing else matters more. This is not the end of your story. It is the point where excuses expire. From here on, progress depends on one thing only. Whether you operate consistently in alignment with the man you have decided to become. No drama. No waiting. No permission. Just disciplined action, repeated long enough to change everything. That is how lasting results are built. And that is how this chapter closes. With responsibility accepted, direction clarified, and work begun.